Hello, Starry Fam. It's time again. Time for this look at the lunar cycle coming up. It's going to be a new moon November 20th, 2025, and a full moon December 4th. That could be like the 19th or 20th. Also, the full moon could be the 4th or 5th, depending on where you are in the world. But the new moon, November 20th, for these purposes, happens in constellation Libra. And the full moon on December 4th, in my time zone, happens on the Scorpio Taurus axis with the sun in Scorpio and the moon in Taurus. You are all probably really sick of hearing the word intense by now. This string of lunar cycles within calendar year 2025 has been nothing short of just mind obliterating for so many people. It's been such a hard year. I think we can add to our vocabulary this month powerful and surreal. We have adjectives for this lunation, but those two might suffice. It's going to be a great month to initiate new ventures, new projects, new long-term activities. It's going to be a really opportune month. So we'll zero in on like power dates and just like power times for different kinds of projects. We'll zero in on that this month. There's a lot going on. Again, um, yeah, let's get into it. For a lot of reasons, I usually start with the 3D view, the sort of stellarium view of the heavens. I'm unable to this month as due to changes in my Windows emulator. I make these videos and do all my computing on Linux, and I'm not going to speak Linux at any of you and bore you, but yeah, my Windows emulator updated, and I can no longer do those 3D things. I can still use Capricorn Prometheus, but that's all I want to say right now. What I do want to jump into is right into the 2D view. What we're usually looking at. You can get the 3D view. You can go to Stellarium on the web or in the app, and you can check out the heavens for yourself at any time. This is what they're going to look like on November 20th. So yeah, without further ado, let's just jump in. We have a Libra new moon right here in late Libra with Mercury. It's in grand trine to this Saturn Neptune series formation in Jupiter, and it's opposite to Uranus. That's where we're going to start. That's out of all of this, and you can see that almost every planet is in some sort of Sirius formation with almost every other planet. But we're just going to start with the broad strokes. We're going to look at this new moon from that point of view. So it's a Libra new moon, and Libra means balance. It means the scale. And it's been understood really differently, but also somewhat similarly throughout history and human culture. So if we go back to Babylon 4,000 years ago, it was Zibabana. Zibana meant the balance of heaven or the scales. And these scales were held sacred to the sun god, right? Shamash, who was the patron of like truth and justice. So we have a strong similarity. Incidentally, you may ask, well, what then of Leo? And incidentally, it's the case that Leo was Venus's. Actually, Venus was known in Babylon as the lion of heaven. So we have another little switcheroo in the rulerships in this model. Going back to Babylon for that model. To the Arabic astronomers and astrologers, this part of the heavens was actually the claws of the scorpion. And I wish I could show you the 3D view for that, but if you look it up, you'll see it's very easy to fit the stars of Libra into the constellation of Scorpius. So by contrast to the Arabic astronomer astrologers, this was the claws of the scorpion. It was the scorpion comes up all through Ophiuchus, where the tail is, and Scorpio, where the heart and body are, and Libra was the claws. So one weird side note on that was the Babylonian Zib-ba-ana was really similar to the Arabic word Zubana, which meant scorpion in Arabic and other Semitic languages. It meant scorpion's claws. So there's the same word that was used for balance of heaven and scales is similar. There doesn't seem to be an etymological thread there, but I won't bore you with the history of language. Just to say it's a very confusing point, and it's a confusing issue about Libra. In Vedic astrology, we have this mostly making up a nakshatra, a lunar mansion called Visakha, and that means forked or having branches. And it's associated with choices, with balance, and again with justice. Later in Greece, we get the sky that we sort of know of. But earlier in Greece, it was the claws of the scorpion. The ancient Greeks called this area chele, which literally meant claws. And you can read more about that in the work of Ian Ridpath. The ancient Greeks did know this as the claws of the scorpion. It was actually Rome's only significant contribution to astrology, per se, was to declaw the scorpion and invoke the ancient Babylonian scales again. And they did this. So Babylon is about 4,000 years ago that this was thought of as the scales. And then it was the scorpion's claws. And then Rome came back and said, no, it's the scales again. And it was Virgo's scales. Right? This fit with the idea of Virgo as a goddess of justice and of balance. So the common threads through all this narrative are justice and balance, right? So there's no problem here between like vanilla everyday Libra that we get and these ideas of justice and balance. That's fine, right? And whether you take these as the scales of Ma'at, of high truth, or whether you take this as scorpion men guarding the gates of the afterlife, that's a reference to the Epic of Gilgamesh. But there are numerous associations with death and power and justice, whether in this life or the next, and they correlate with the galactic center as a sort of underworld and the transition through Scorpio as an underworld journey. This new moon happens late in these stars of Libra, so there's more balance here than there is in early Libra. But caveat, Libra is not inherently balanced. This is not vanilla Libra. Vanilla Libra is like nice. It likes, long walks on the beach and French pastries. But in reality, Libra sort of seeks balance. It's challenged to find balance. We also have Mercury. Mercury is right in here at 15 degrees with sun and moon. So he's combust. He's Kazemi, or however you prefer to language that. But he's right with the sun. And this tends to complicate communication in pretty unusual ways. Now he's retrograde across from opposite to Uranus, who's retrograde, and in relationship to a lot of retrograde planets. So we can expect communication to be, Mercury retrograde's a different thing to different people. I don't think there's one hard and fast rule on Mercury retrograde. If there is one, it's going to apply this month because Mercury is about, as retrograde as it gets, in that he's in contact with all these other retrograde figures. There's a very interesting feature of this new moon, which is on the Venus-Mars midpoint. And I don't often talk about midpoints, but midpoints are important. They do track, and you can You can test that for yourself in astrology. So when the sun moon is on Venus Mars midpoint, this implies a balance of Venus and Mars. Now, both planets are at home. Venus is in Libra and Mars is in Scorpio. But Mars is stronger here. Mars is on fixed star Antares. That's Alpha Scorpio, the heart of the Scorpion, and and is and is in the evening star position to the sun, where Venus is the morning star, and where ordinarily I would say this could look like pretty balanced. It might have the potential to bring Venus diplomacy to Martian aggression. Might have the potential to bring softness, but Mars on Antares is really notorious, and I'm just gonna just say in short that this has the potential to trigger masculinity issues of all kinds. It might look really balanced, and in some ways it may really be, and we'll explore that in the course of this video. But in actuality, the omens here don't point squarely to like nice, tactful, diplomatic solutions like Venus in Libra gets associated with. Like I mentioned, Venus is the morning star. Mars is the evening star. She's setting with Antares. And under these influences, the classical thinking is these are omens that it's going to be hard to achieve or keep peace. Mars Antares is going to give way to Mars on the degree of Rossalhag for the full moon. And that does indicate during this lunar cycle the potential for resolution and healing. So it's not to say that the omens are just pure Martian war and aggression and all of this, but it could actually indicate the potential for resolution. It could actually indicate the potential for a mystical month for a lot of men on Earth, or people who are dealing with issues around masculinity, their own masculine side, how they've been affected by masculinity. And we'll talk about that more in the full moon segment, how the healing potential of this can come into balance, come into play. So another reason that it's going to be difficult to kind of harness this inner planet balance, right? It looks pretty balanced. It's in grand trine to like Saturn, Jupiter. That's a balance of power. But one reason it's going to be difficult to harness this harmoniously is this opposition to Uranus. And with this, we bring in the bizarre, the next level, like truly inspired, unconventional, futuristic, unexpected, jarring, spasmodic, explosive. It's going to be energy that's difficult to predict, and it just simply resists understanding. The opposition is really notably productive of anxiety. And this is stress produced by trying to integrate these high voltage flows, right? These high voltage flows of Uranus into the nervous system. That's Mercury, right? Here, Mercury is combust. That's going to further complicate the integration, the clarity, the good flow. It's going to be a lot for those of us who can integrate it, who are in a position to integrate this. It could bring a lot of creative, inventive energy, a lot of original energy, and keep in mind that Uranus and Neptune are actually making a pretty special relationship, because this new moon, they are zeroed. Their sextile is perfected, and so that brings Neptunian energy, where Neptune is trine to Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Uranus opposite. It's going to amplify the connection, the relationship, the talking to of Neptune, Uranus, and this is famously surreal. It's very dreamlike. It's inspiring, but what's inspiring about it is it's very cosmic. So we're touching here the outer limits of consciousness. It's very mystical and magical and charged with the supernatural. It marries the shamanic to the technological, and in a really beautiful way. That's Neptune. That connects consciousness and the collective experience, Sun, Moon, to the unseen world. Okay, so look out. Look out. You have to be careful with the unseen world because it has its own set of rules and predilections and prerogatives. You just have to be careful with it. You have to be careful with the invisible world and the supernatural. And this could be a month where we see like, oh, I don't know, signs and mysteries and, maybe, maybe strange displays. It could really be a time when the bizarreness of like, oh, I don't know, maybe Three-Eye Atlas, or maybe bringing Neptune in also brings Neptune Saturn in, which brings a whole host of very charged political situations on planet Earth in. So, when I say look out, I mean it in all earnestness. Like, people get excited about the supernatural, like, oh yeah, but in my experience, it's a live wire with its own set of rules, and if you don't know those rules, you shouldn't sit down at that table to play that game. Learn the rules first. It's just some practical advice. And one last point on this Neptunian bizarre, the surreal, and all this and so on, is that Neptune is on a fixed star, Shiat. That's Beta Pegasus. And Shiat is very well known. This degree of the zodiac, Shiat's a northern star, and Neptune in this degree is going to be tapped into breakthrough, genius, and the incredible. That's what surrounds Shiat. Also, what surrounds Shiat? Heartbreak and sorrow. Okay, they go together. The complex surrounding Shiat is one of breakthrough and genius, and it's usually goes along with sorrow, or it's a heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking breakthrough. It comes at incredible loss or at incredible cost, perhaps. All right, onward then. We're going to look at how these inner planets are combining with Jupiter and Saturn. We have a grand trine to Jupiter and the Ceres Neptune-Saturn conjunction. So this is a lot. Okay, let's just break it down. Let's just break it down piecemeal. Let's first look at Saturn and Neptune. Ceres is really tiny next to these giants. Actually, Saturn has 4 moons and Neptune has 1 moon that are larger than Ceres. So we're going to sort of keep Ceres to the side and just focus on Saturn, Neptune. And much has been said about Saturn, Neptune, their natures, their difficulty, the correlate processes at ground level. This month, thanks to Jupiter and Venus in the mix, we'll look at things from the perspective of personal empowerment and grasping an opportunity that's presenting itself, sort of this ripe fruit ready to fall into our hand here. But this is not to say that just because Saturn and Jupiter are in trine and that the sun and moon are trine to them, that it's going to be easy, that power will be the fruit in your hand. It's not quite that easy, but this is like the caterpillar soup phase within the chrysalis. If you know what I'm talking about, when a caterpillar goes into a chrysalis and becomes a butterfly, it doesn't just grow wings and legs like it does. No, first it totally dissolves. It totally melts. It becomes soup, like it's just a sort of muck of genetic material, and we can think about that in the context of shifting ideologies in our world, where and that's correlate to Saturn and Neptune in conjunction. And this involves letting go of old sets of ideas, right? Letting go of our caterpillar way of being and adopting a whole new set of ideas. Um, Saturn isn't really ideas here as much as organizational structures. So what we're dealing with is ideologies. And that's why I use the language shifting Neptune, ideologies, Saturn. Because we're talking about organizational structures and we're talking about big picture stuff. We're talking about big vision. So this represents a sort of trial by dissolution. And, in spite of that, this leap of faith that's asked of everyone, or maybe because of it, we can turn our sails to catch this mighty wind and use this kind of ambient power consciously. So some ways to do that might be seeing our autonomy in a new light. That's Saturn, autonomy, Neptune. Seeing it spiritualized, seeing it in a new way, in a higher dimensional way, in a larger context. Another way we can think about how to use this to our personal growth and advantages. It could be bringing our own dreams, right, Neptune, our own personal vision, Neptune, into actual shared reality. That's Saturn. We could be dissolving obstacles to our own autonomy. That's an easy language around this marriage. Dissolving obstacles to our own autonomy. We could be transcending limitations, transcending personal limitations. Living and acting out of your own high truth, right? That's Neptune, in a grounded and harmonious way. That's Saturn and Pisces. The combination Saturn and Neptune joins idealism with realism. It joins visionary inspiration with pragmatic level-headedness. And it can generate compassionate organizing principles in our lives. This is very powerful, very positive, and charged with a lot of potential. Ceres, when we bring Ceres into this, she can activate themes of self-reclamation, giving us access to our own inner child. And also, she faces potential death in the underworld for love. And this is symbolic, right? She is Demeter, the mother of Kore Persephone. And speaking your heart in well-received ways. Ceres symbolizes this. With the sun and moon and host of inner planets symbolizing the conscious mind, with them in this kite, we're going to have full-scale conscious access to a lot of deeper processes. With the inner planets in really balanced formation. So one of the good sides of this is that the Venus Mars balance does support each other, regardless of where they are relative to the sun and what those omens are. As a pair, they support each other in balance. If the sun moon is on their midpoint, is a harmonious feature. So likewise, harmonious Jupiter here on Pollux. It's Beta Gemini, the warrior twin, the warrior twin in the warrior shepherd duo. And this really invites kind of power moves, bold steps towards victory. And, externally, just a side note, there's a very close square to Eris. We have Jupiter square Eris at 0 degrees 10 minutes, arc minutes. And so that and the idea that Jupiter is on Pollux, the warrior twin, this could be omens of volatile nature this month. So again, that is more outwardly in the mundane world. Inwardly, it may be in spite of some outer turbulence. It may be because of some outer turbulence that we're going inward and we're applying our understanding of the balance of power this month to personal growth. And that's one of the many things that Saturn and Jupiter in a grand trine will foster. So let's wrap this up. Outwardly, even though it looks like Mars and Venus are balanced, all the inner planets are centered on harmonious Libra, right? The omens are not really that strong for diplomacy and negotiation as they are for conflict, right? Aggression. Mars on Antares, Venus is the morning star, war. So inwardly, like I'm saying, the big difference, or maybe there's not. Maybe outwardly it could be all out of whack, and inwardly it can be power time. This month is really big uh power for the people who know. So it's a chance to explore personal power, um, of all kinds. It's kind of all in alignment. The Mars Venus is balanced, the Jupiter Saturn is balanced, the Uranus Mercury is balanced, and Uranus Neptune is exact. So there's a lot of expression of balance and power this lunation, and we're going to detail in the transit section of this video kind of special power times, like I said, for various activities, because this month is really rich with them. Now we're going to get into the transits of the waxing quarter. And the first thing that we have is Sun trine Uranus. That's September 21st. And Sun trine Neptune and Sun opposite Uranus, both September 21st. And Ceres also stations direct September 21st. We'll touch on that. What I want to say about Sun trine Neptune and Sun opposite Uranus is we talked in the new moon section about the surreal and creative, the kind of inspirational, supernatural, that this connects to the unseen world. And with Ceres station direct, this could intensify the emotional component of any of this. Feelings could be very strange at this time. It might have really weird experiences around the 21st and 22nd. And the 22nd ends with Mercury trining to Jupiter and Saturn. So this empowers communication, and it communicates power. That's kind of how a grand trine works. Yeah, it goes both ways. Both Jupiter and Saturn resonate with law, money, work, and society. Jupiter represents good fortune and abundance, and Saturn represents discipline and resourcefulness. So Jupiter expands and Saturn contracts. That's like the first thing you learn in astrology. Jupiter expands and Saturn contracts. And it's very true. And when you get them in the balance of power, they really hold steady. And what they're holding steady is power. It's a very stable, balanced power. And the balance via the trine is famously empowering to whoever comes into contact with Jupiter and Saturn. So in this case, it's Mercury, and this is a great time on the 22nd and 23rd to start mercurial projects. And those could be anything fast-paced, anything involving the exchange of information, anything involving commerce and transaction or travel or movement, anything that requires mental agility rather than physical labor. As a mercurial project. So anything that communicates, anything like that, this is a great time to initiate. It'll charge anything you're doing, anything long term that you're doing. If you initiate it at a certain time, it'll charge the entire life of the whole thing. It's just what a natal chart is with that energy. So anything begun here, if you do like a project or you released something, or it would just have that energy. It would have that energy moving forward. That's how we look at this. And moving forward to the 23rd, we see Sun sextile Pluto on the 23rd. This kind of connects our personal radiance, right, and organizing intentions, right, that Sun, to power and transformation. That's Pluto. So it's a good time to reevaluate the principles of your life and how you're expressing them. There's a lot of depth of insight, and there's a lot of ability to pivot here on the 23rd. It's a great time to this whole 21st, 22nd, 23rd be a really great time to take strange insight, think about it deeply, and then make any changes in your world, in your inner world that need to be made. And on the 24th, Sun trines Ceres and Mercury conjoins Venus. So this is all pretty elevated, pretty expressive. Mercury and Venus make it artistic and excellent, refined communication, warm feelings. Warm feelings follow both of these. So on the 24th, it's a good day to maybe plan to do something nice with people you love. It's gonna be a good day to get along. Then on the 25th, we have Jupiter. Peak of the wave, Jupiter square Eris. This favors surreptitious actions, espionage, criminal enterprise. It favors success in shadow work. It favors exorcism. It favors wrestling with shadows and personal demons and balancing light and darkness. On the 26th, oh, we have so many transits before we even get to the waxing quarter moon. But the rest of the month isn't like this, only the beginning. So the 26th, we have two transits. They're both Venus transits. And Venus now enters into grand trine with Saturn and Jupiter. So this empowers harmony. And in following suit, it harmonizes power. Everything we said about Jupiter and Saturn relative to Mercury is going to apply here. It's going to be a great time to start Venusian projects, right? It's going to be a really great time to and Venusian projects are actually we can sort of just get a rough outline of what those are. That deals with arts, fashion, beauty, hospitality, right? Harmony and beauty. Yeah, it's actually true. And don't forget that Venus symbolizes strategy, cunning, patience, sweetness without naivete. Venus on the 26th is the morning star. She's here on the 26th. She'll be in her morning star position. And this is her war aspect. So Venus can resonate with war just like Mars can resonate with peaceful activities like farming and invention, innovation, discovery, exploration, courage, motivation, honor, self-cultivation. Generally, all these things can be Martian, but I digress. My point is, don't limit Venus unfairly in her nature. She isn't limited to being nice. Okay, she's just very good at it. She's not limited to being tactful. She's not limited to being diplomatic. So with that in mind, Venusian projects can include all the usual stuff, right? Art, fashion, beauty, hospitality. But it can also be anything that expands personal power, wealth, influence, relationships of any kind. Any project that aims to deal with offensive or volatile materials in life by negotiation, by de-escalation, by diplomatic means, by tact and manners and respect, politeness and genuine appreciation, right? Just broadly speaking, it's a power point in time right here on the 26th of November. A powerful time to take these actions and especially to initiate any long-term project relative to these Venusian themes. And then we approach the waxing quarter moon and we see Saturn and Mercury stationed direct. Again, look out. my notes only say look out. So we can riff on this. Saturn stationed direct and in Pisces has the potential to be weird. We could feel stuck or stubborn. We could feel like we were blocked spiritually. And that'll pass. Just like Mercury station direct, communication can be affected in very hard to predict ways. Stationings, what we can say about stationings that we know to be true every time is that stationings intensify the effect of that planet. Now, don't do it in any particular or like uniform way. And a planet has each planet has myriad ways that it expresses. But when we station direct, it increases the intensity of that particular force. And with that in mind, let's take a quick look at the waxing quarter moon on the 28th. So here we are, and we see that Mercury is still retro, Saturn will be stationed, the moon will be with the North Node in stars of Aquarius, Sun will have moved into Scorp. All right, I'll leave that up for people who make their own study. You can pause it, and let's get back to these waxing transits. All right, so for this last section here, we just have 4 transits. The beginning of the month is going to be very intense, very powerful. The beginning of this month. Actually, when I say month, I mean lunar cycle. As far as calendar months go, the end of calendar month November looks to be intense. Just looks to be intense, powerful and intense. And then we wind down the last of the transits of the month with Venus transits, where Venus enters into relationship with the outer planets. Venus can be opposite Uranus on the 29th, trine Neptune on the 30th, then sextile Pluto and trine Ceres on December 2nd. So let's look at this Venus coming into contact with Neptune and Uranus as kind of one thing. And then, because it's bundled in time as one thing, but it actually, because Neptune and Uranus are in contact, it really is one thing. And then the Pluto and Ceres contacts to Venus happen on the 2nd. So we'll look at that together in a separate way. Venus trine Neptune, Venus opposite Uranus here on the 29th and 30th. This is really potentially inspiring, and it could be also confusing in matters of love. It could really electrify relationships with a lot of like mystical experience, but it connects the interpersonal sphere to the unseen world. So actually this could be amazing for spiritualists, mediums, channels. This could be a really special, very potentized time. This could be a great time to go to see a trusted psychic or someone who you feel has a genuine gift in that regard. Yeah. And then Venus sextile Pluto, Venus trine Ceres is, Venus is joining the basket here, right, of outer planets. So she gains a lot of power and energy from Pluto and Ceres too. This is going to be a good day on the 2nd. It's going to be a good day to pay attention to relationships and what they're telling us about our inner journey, especially in regards to reclamation, right? Reclaiming all the numbed or hurt or forgotten, frozen parts of ourselves. Again, to Pluto and Ceres and their interaction as Hades and Demeter in mythology. So it's very telling. It really is interesting how the astrology of it plays out. All right, onward, my friends, to the full moon. Nice. Here we are. And yeah, the full moon, December 4th, it'll happen for much of the world on the 5th. You can see here it's late in the day on the 4th. We have the sun in Scorpio opposite a moon in Taurus. We have the sun with Venus and Mars. Mars is on Ras Al Hag. And that's all happening on this axis. We have Mercury still in grand trine with Saturn and Jupiter. A very interesting formation that's going to color the entire month. It'll be the next new moon before this grand trine releases. So incredibly mercurial month. And still opposite to Uranus and Taurus too. Let's just start there. Let's start there with those broad strokes and we'll break it down. When we're talking about a sun in Scorpio and a moon in Taurus, I've always found it hard to read this because a moon in Taurus, sun in Scorpio is like moon wants to stabilize. That's just the Taurus prerogative. The stars here are infusing moon with the energy of stabilization. Now, moon is reflecting light from the sun who sits in Scorpius. And this is a hard energy to stabilize, right? It was quite possible It's very possible to do this. It's just difficult. And it usually involves understanding a balance of creation and destruction. And we can think of destruction here as creating space for something that is going to grow. Okay, we're making space for future growth in a creation destruction cycle that's very well symbolized by the Scorpio Taurus axis. So destruction isn't a Scorpio guarantee. It's just a possibility that's easy to sensationalize. So I don't want to sensationalize it. I want to say Scorpio likewise governs protection, right? It governs healing. Okay. It governs regrowth. That's physical. It governs rejuvenation. That's energetic. And it governs revelation. That's mental. So it has on every level of our being, it has qualities and properties that are deep, they're profound, there's healing, regrowth, rejuvenation, revelation, right? It's a powerful healing energy set of stars here. So we don't have to categorize it. We don't have to think of it as breakdown, as like destruction, as self-sabotage. Scorpio definitely has those overtones. Overtones, yeah, but it's not the only story here. We can lean into this full moon by anchoring, right? And anchoring the mysterious, the mystical, the magical, the liminal. That's Scorpio in our lives, right? And this is really on brand for this lunar cycle. If you take it back to the new moon and everything I said about Uranus and Neptune and how mystical, how how supernatural. This is a good time. This is a good month to be working with those themes consciously. The sun to move on, we have the sun is with Venus and Mars, kind of staying in this range of like the sun's still on their midpoint, really. Venus about 8 degrees away, Mars about 9 from the sun. So this looks balanced, and Mars is on a better star. Mars is on fixed star Ras Al Hag. So we have to understand that the seed was planted and then the new moon while Mars was on Antares. So Ras Al Hag here has the potential to signify a very hypnotic effect. And even though Venus balances this, it has as much potential to manifest as large-scale gaslighting as it does to manifest as meaningful healing, a la Ras Al Hag, okay? But, in spite of all that, the knowledge of this cycle and the willingness to work with it can definitely yield opportunities to heal via the balance of Venus and the proximity of Mars, and the sun being on their midpoint. This is very powerful, and there's a lot of healing potential to lean into. So we can really use Martian activity to harness cosmic healing and a connection with the fucus. That's Martian activity is activity like, well, Mars symbolizes activity. So activity of all kinds is actually Martian. But we can talk about Martian activity as dynamic activities, things that require exertion, things that involve climbing to new levels, things that involve taking new steps, being brave, being courageous, being willful. Mars initiates. Mars is libidinous. Mars is sexual. Mars is competitive. Mars symbolizes self-mastery through martial arts, being assertive, using tools. Mars symbolizes all kind of constructive stuff that doesn't get mentioned in astrology. We don't see Mars as like a good man. We see him as a god of war because Rome and the Grecian mumbo jumbo that we speak to each other in astrology today just goes unquestioned. So you got to question that. You got to look at Mars and wonder, is he good for more than war? And the answer is yes. Hard hell yes. So moving on from that, we have Mercury. Mercury is still in Grand Trine. Mercury is still in this kite, okay? Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus. Okay, this is really going to turn Mercury up this month. Okay, one of the hallmarks of the month. Mercury's going to spend real quality time because he was moving really slowly, right? Because in the first transits that we looked at, the waxing transits, he's stationed. So he was retrograde, then he's stationed. Now he's moving slowly forward. And the whole time, that whole vicinity is the degree of Grand Trine and Kite. So this empowers our genius, all right, whenever we have Uranus and Mercury in contact. It gives balance to great thoughts, okay, mighty insights. This is serious. This is a good month to sit and think constructively and think in organized ways, think in disorganized ways, just daydream, do whatever, but engage your mind. Engage your mind this month. Even though the other inner planets have moved on, I mean, the moon well moved on, and Mercury, Venus, or sorry, Venus, Mars, Sun are up in Scorpion, Fucus. Mercury is just hanging out. So one of the symptoms of this, depending on how it interacts with you personally, is anxiety. This could be just too much this month. It could be an overload. It could be a recipe for overload. So things should be intensified internally for many of us. Many people will be communicating exciting and powerful ideas this month. But during this mercurial month, this very empowered month, I've got to look into like a couple examples of just like how we can work with Mercury. Couple deeper understandings of what Mercury is, who Mercury was, and so on. So. Um, this lunar cycle, I'm actually going to animate the whole lunar cycle because what it leans around to is really relevant to what I'm going to say. So I'll take it back. We've got the new moon. We're going to start with the new moon. Now we already looked at this in the new moon section of the video. I want to draw attention to Mercury. Keep your eye on Mercury here. He didn't change degrees. Everything else just moved. So he's still here. And still here, that's the full moon. Then starting to move on in the waxing or the waning quarter. And here you'll see the next new moon, December 19th. And what I want to draw your attention to has nothing to do with Mercury, even though Mercury is on fixed star Antares, Alpha Scorpius. What I want to show you is that the new moon happens just past galactic center in Sag, and it is square to Saturn and Neptune, and that's all we really need to focus on for right now, that it's square to Saturn and Neptune and past galactic center, because there's intensity guaranteed by Antares behind Mercury. There's intense communication, and it signifies initiation of a new phase in the entire collective consciousness, the yearly pulse, right? So the idea of context here is that this entire cycle, the one we're looking at, here we're back to the full moon, what we're talking about in Maine, and the idea of context is that this entire cycle is like a balsamic phase cycle to a new beginning, symbolized by new moon past galactic center. Okay, and that's powerful, right? The galactic center is always going to be a starting point, and that means that as things approach it, they're going to be ending, they're going to be winding down. So the balsamic phase represents a closing and a breakdown of energy and making room for new growth. It's a big theme this month. Scorpio's notorious death and rebirth are going to play visible roles with the inner planets here this month. But what I wanted to focus on in light of that and that context is that an awesome activity for the duration of this lunation, that rhymed a little too much, but I'm going to leave it in the video. An awesome activity is going to be retrospection, right? Processing the past, okay, letting go. Why? Because we're in a balsamic phase to a new cycle that's about to start. So, this is a great month with all of this powerful energy beaming down on Mercury, all this insight and power to consider the last year since last like winter solstice time. Reflecting on the patterns of life is going to be really, really fruitful here. The joys, the hardships, the regrets, the growth edges, you get to take the whole thing in, right? If something worked well for you or lifted you up, keep it, incorporate it, make it a habit. If something left you with a need for improvement, to do it better next time, recognize that, hold that intention to do it better next time. Scorpio Ophiuchus season is really naturally attuned to this approach to the galactic center. And if we take Libra as part of the Scorpio, then really as soon as planets are into it, into Libra, they're committed. They're on this journey. We're breaking down. We're getting ready for the next beginning. So yeah, it's a scorpionic, a Ophiuchian process of reckoning, of breakdown, of dissolution. Metamorphosis and mutation are okay. Tell your children. Metamorphosis and mutation are okay. It asks us for commitment to an evolutionary leap, a willingness to enter into a mysterious intensity, right? With courage, knowing that something symbolic of a caterpillar will end and something symbolic of a butterfly will begin. Caterpillar soup. So, this strange balance of Taurus, right? Taurus, the coagulant, and Scorpio Ophiuchus, the solvent, is a very paradoxical blend. It's a seeming contradiction that, when reconciled, yields great power. We usually have to choose in these situations on this axis when it gets involved. We usually have to choose whether to evolve or not. We have to commit. We have to surrender to the process. These are scorpionic prerogatives that are easy to overlook. So outwardly, just to wrap all this up, the whole lunar cycle could be anxious. That's a Uranus Mercury thing. Uranus and Mercury just stay opposite all month. And then, we have this sustained contact between Mercury and Jupiter and Saturn Uranus via the grand trine. And we could really have extra charged dialogue. And it could be charged in good ways. It could be charged with awesome insight. It could be charged with breakthrough. It could be charged with electrifying genius. And as the inner planets kind of march towards the galactic center, they're winding down their respective cycles too, right? So there could be added layers of experience that feel heavy or ask for more, difficult consideration. That's a Scorpio Ophiuchus thing. So there's incredible medicine in these processes if we're able to look at where they've been and what they're telling us as they allow us to make way for the next new beginning. Yeah, and inwardly, so looking at this from point of view of the inner world, the medicine is here for everyone to benefit from. So be ready for some mental activity this month, that is guaranteed. And be ready to channel that. Give voice to that. Have constructive outlets for that. Be ready. Because Mercury's blessed by all this gigantic power, right? Freaking huge power in the sky. So the most practical approach here is to avoid overwhelm, right? This represents power. This represents high voltage ideas and insights, next level stuff coming through. So how do we avoid overwhelm? In mercurial sense, mercurial ways, being able to channel that and channel it practically. We have writing, music, dance, yoga, travel, shopping, studying, working. They're all mercurial activities. So we all have our angle and our mercurial outlets. Like I guarantee you, Mercury's versatile and he's in everyone's life. We all have a mercurial side. This month is going to be good for a lot more than shopping. Yeah. But More like depth insight, right, into our personal power. More like, access to real wisdom. More like access to next level, uh, ideas, concepts, ideations. You're going to have access to this. So pay attention to thoughts that seem to come from the knowing field or ideas that have that like special tingle to them. We can access whole different orders of thought when Uranus alone is involved. And we really have weird and strange and powerful in the mix too this month. So with that, friends, I want to wish everyone a good, safe full moon, and let's move on to the waning transit. All right, we'll do this like this. Welcome to the waning transits. This is December 4th, the full moon, and the next new moon, December 19th. December 11th is the waning quarter moon, making these the waning transits. We have Mercury trine Jupiter on the 6th and Mercury trine Saturn on the 7th. This is the second time this month we're going to have this opportunity with Mercury in grand trine to Saturn Jupiter because he's stationed and now he's moving direct again. So everything we said in the waxing transit section applies. This is the time to harness mercurial power. It's a great time to begin any mercurial venture. You can time projects or sequences to this time period and catch the wind. It's a great time to initiate a new course of study. It's a great time to travel, to conversate, to share ideas. Mercury is very mystical, as I was saying, as well as being practical. So it's a good day to refresh the hermetic mysteries. As above, so below, or act like So, so, so Mars trine Eris happens on the 8th, and Mars square Saturn likewise later on that same day. And this is difficult Mars transits. Classically, we think of these as difficult Mars transits, as Mars in late Ophiuchus is approaching the galactic center. So he's nearing his breakdown point and he's getting all these weird aspects from Pisces. So if you see others having difficulty balancing their masculine side, or if you have trouble, especially with passive aggressive urges, it's just like when Mars is affected by Pisces, you can have that. Just my advice is give people a lot of room. Give yourself a lot of room on the 8th and lean into doing the work of trying to discover your healthy masculinity, to try to repattern is a potential here. Eris is a very transformative, very, very transformative effect on what she touches. It's not always easy, but it is transformative. So we can work with this skillfully if we have the willingness to be honest with ourselves and to be on guard, to check ourselves around the 8th for, unsavory masculinity, and especially passive aggressive. Like if something gets your Irish up, just don't, you're going to create more problems than you solve if you try and be like sly or snide about it. Just, better just to say it, but to understand that the expression of Martian energies on the 8th is not going to be easy at all. Then on the 10th, we have Neptune. She stations direct. And we have Mercury perfecting opposition to Uranus. So that's pretty cool. Pretty trippy and inspiring. Or alternatively, like confused and intoxicated and deluded. but Uranus and Neptune together, because when we're looking at on the 10th at Mercury opposite Uranus, we're also seeing on the 11th that the trine to Neptune occurs because these two are moving together in the sky. And this, as we've said so many times this video, surreal, dreamy, insightful. But this is with Mercury opposite Uranus. This is a time for like mandala effects and matrix glitches and all kind of just weird weird reality stuff to be happening. And I'm not implying that we live in a matrix or that simulacrum theory is I'm not co-signing that, but I do understand that reality is far stranger than those ideas. And we might see some of that. We might see some of that around this time. Mercury rules a million things. He rules so many things. But originally, if you go back far enough, Mercury was the guardian. He was the guardian of paths and people on them. He was symbolic of language and scribes, travelers and paths, and he was mystical and practical. So, like I said, not just the path to the next town, but I'm talking about like the path, like the way, like this is the way, the path to inner freedom and self-mastery, the path that we take to walk a greater journey, or perhaps the path between the mind and the heart, because that's the mercurial journey. That's the mercurial journey at the level of human experience. But we have that taking us right into the waning quarter moon on the 11th. So I want to look at that chart, waning quarter moon. And we see moon here with south node in late Leo. We see sun squarely in the leg of a fucus. And even in the degree of fixed star Sabik, where the body joins the serpent, constellation serpent. I apologize, my big head's in the way. I'll leave this for those who want to pause and take it in, and we'll get back to those waning quarter transits. All right, we're almost through it, and we have on December 12th, Saturn and Neptune in conjunction. That's not on this chart because it's heliocentric. There's actually nothing, no aspects on this transit graph, but on December 12th, we want everyone to understand Saturn and Neptune conjoin from a heliocentric point of view. So we have entered time period between December 12th, 2025 and February 20th, 2026. And it is Saturn-Neptune time. So these Saturn-Neptune activities have been peaking over the course of the last year because Saturn and Neptune have been flirting. They've been kind of winking at each other. They're really close, and they're like, not going to touch until February 20th from geocentric point of view, but December 12th from heliocentric point of view. And believe me, that's significant, and we are in it, fam. Very hard cycle, I think. Saturn, Neptune, I'd characterize it as one of the more difficult cycles we deal with and in our human existence. Cyclesofhistory.com. Go there, link in the description below for the 36-year cycle of Saturn Neptune. There's a lot of information there. It's not an astrology site, but I'll link to it because you can go and see what I'm talking about if you don't know. On the 13th and 14th, we have Mercury sextile Pluto. Then we have Mars square Neptune. And then we have Mercury trine Ceres. So Mars square Neptune is going to be the longest lasting of these transits. It's going to kind of bring the whole three together into a group. Mars square Neptune is very good for breaking artistic barriers. It's very good for impactful ideas and vivid expression. Mars trine Ceres on the 14th or Mercury trine Ceres and Mercury sextile Pluto are going to combine to create potential for communication. And communication can be very splashy, it can be very vibrant, it can be very heartfelt. Pluto brings a deep and serious vibe, but this could be a very intense time of communicating powerful ideas. And because of the splashy nature, because of the famous vibrant effect of Mars Neptune, I want to just caution people, be careful what you say, or at least who you say it to. Because this goes right into Sun trine Eris, and Sun square Saturn. So again, these are commonly more difficult to work with, like we talked about in the Mars transits here. And yeah, it could signify a real grind. It could signify obstacle. It is short-lived because the Sun, these are Sun transits, but these are commonly more difficult to work with. So we have a couple of days, maybe 16th, 17th, and these could be tough emotionally. Saturn and Eris are both harsh teachers. And they could be very rewarding days if we lean into what's being asked of us, but what's being asked of us is pretty serious discipline and self-examination. And that winds down the month. We can look at the next new moon. That's always exciting. We touched on this during the full moon section. We have a new moon just past galactic center, sort of start of the new year, start of a new cycle, a new solar cycle. It'll take us till next time Sun passes GC. Yeah, we're square Saturn, Neptune, and we're trine Eris, Chiron. It doesn't look easy, but we'll cover that next month. Now, yeah, thanks. Thanks for staying with all this. I want to make a couple announcements on my way out. We have Priestess Press calendars and planners available at the Etsy shop, Rogue Utilities. There's a link in the description. I'll put one on the screen too. Etsy shop Rogue Utilities. That's Real Armand's calendars, planners, and 13 sign block print genius. Elsewhere in the news, the International Sidereal Astrology Association is growing. siderealinternational.org. Again, in the description below. They are doing really exciting ancient astrology workshops and materials. There's a November 29th Babylonian astrology workshop following on their excellent Sumerian astrology workshop. And there's info on their homepage, and that's in the description below for those who need it. I want to refresh everyone and invite you to Radical Astrology on Facebook. It's a private group that you can join if you want to connect with other people who use constellational or sidereal, 13 sign, and true sky astrology by all the names that it goes by. And my own work. There it is, oneskyastro.com. Check me out, what I'm about. Yeah, I do sessions. I do client work. Come ask me a question. Thank you, fam. What a month. What a period of time. What a time wave. Surf's up. So see you out there.